What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. I hope you all had a very happy Thanksgiving. If there's one thing that I was thankful for this year, obviously the turkey in front of me, my family, and the Fireside Giants community. Very thankful for each and every one of you who tunes in on a daily basis to Fireside Giants, despite the fact that the New York Giants are terrible. And man, on Thanksgiving, we got another reminder of how bad the New York Giants are. They lost their 10th game of the season. This is the 9th season out of the last 11 that the Giants have had double-digit losses. And on Thursday, the Giants became the first team in the NFL to be officially eliminated from the postseason race. Now, we already knew we weren't in the postseason race. We knew that we weren't going to make it, but we are now officially eliminated mathematically. Man, what a time. I mean, Thanksgiving to get eliminated, that's pretty damn early. The Giants moved into the number one overall pick in the draft. They currently hold that, but they are in a tight race with the Las Vegas Raiders, who choked on Black Friday and are still in this race because they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs yesterday. So really, there's a whole lot going on with this Giants team, whether we're talking about just how bad they looked on Thanksgiving, if we're talking about this race for the number one pick, or now there's plenty of other news about the injuries that are piling up. Obviously, we knew that Jermaine Illuminor didn't play on Thursday. He was dealing with an injury. So then we got to see some backup offensive linemen play some really bad football and watch Drew Lock get hit 14 times. And hey, now we've got even more bad news. One of the players who played really well on Thursday, Theo Johnson, the rookie, looked like he was finally turning a corner. Injured his foot, done for the season. Oh, how about on the defensive side of the ball? Who has been our shining light, our saving grace week in and week out? Dexter Lawrence, potential defensive player of the year, done for the season, dislocated his elbow on Thursday. Somehow, we always say it can't get any worse than this, Alex. It just goes from bad to worse. It goes from worse to worse. I don't know how it keeps happening, but it just keeps getting worse for the New York Giants. And so here we are 2 days after that Thanksgiving embarrassment. Will Brian Daboll keep his job? Will Joe Schoen keep his job? These are the questions that are being asked, and everybody seems to be split on it. You got some of the beat writers writing these massive 1,500-word columns about, oh, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll deserve another year. Then you have other beat writers writing these long reports why they need to be fired. They've made history in the worst way this season. And we stand here in the middle just kind of listening to both sides and making a decision as we go. But right now, I think it's really hard to justify keeping these guys after a 2-10 start to the season. First team eliminated from the playoffs in the 100th season of the franchise. It's just been such a complete embarrassment this year is really what we've seen from the New York Giants. And like I said, bad to worse. Drew Lock playing in place of Tommy DeVito. Now we've got Theo Johnson out for the year, Dexter Lawrence out for the year. Alex, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I hope you're doing well personally, but our Giants are suffering, and as a result, so are we. How are you feeling about the mess that we saw on Thursday?
Oh, the mess. I actually sat there, and by the way, as you said earlier, thank you guys so much. We have so much gratitude for the community that we've built here alongside you guys, and we couldn't do this without you. The venting, all the emotion, the passion, we're sharing it as fans. We're not just talking about this team and trying to analyze it. We're big Giants fans. We have been our whole lives, and we hope that you guys resonate a little bit with the emotion that comes off of us, and try to be a voice for everyone that's frustrated about the mess that we find ourselves in. But Thursday, I sat there and said to myself, that's the football Giants I know. The team that can throw a screen pass and bat it up in the air and Overshown picks it off for a pick six, or a team that fumbles relentlessly and can't find a way. And listen, this wasn't the same embarrassment that we saw to the Buccaneers, but guys, the Cowboys are a bad football team. We let Cooper Rush absolutely cook us alive, and now we lost Dexter Lawrence, we lost Theo Johnson. Season's basically, if it wasn't already over, now we have to watch it without our starting rookie tight end and our best defensive player. It's only going to get worse. How many more embarrassments can we take until they turn over the leaf here on Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll? Now, listen, I think if John Mara already decided that he was going to keep those two guys, they're safe. Whatever they do the rest of the season probably doesn't matter, but it shouldn't make them safe, in my opinion. I know a lot of reporters, you said, writing about why they think, Joe Schoen and, Brian Daboll should be retained and just ignore, Mara should ignore the outside. I saw a picture of him standing alone, looking miserable at that Thanksgiving game. He did not look happy. And look, I respect the take. I respect the opinion that, you got to block out the outside noise, stick to your guns. You gave them the reins. You have to give them another chance to get their quarterback. But my main argument is this. They had the chance to get a quarterback last year. They could have got J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix, or Bo Nix. By the way, Bo Nix looking pretty damn good over in Denver. Michael Penix, we'll see what happens when he finally takes over. They're obviously using a little bit more of a a cautious strategy and making sure he's ready to go. JJ McCarthy has an unpredictable injury that sets him back, and Sam Darnold steps in and is obviously great. But I think JJ will have a bright future and career with Minnesota Vikings. The Giants had a chance to get a quarterback. They're the ones that passed on it, knowing that 2025 was going to be a weaker class. So I don't really get the argument that, well, we have to give Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll a chance to get their quarterback. Not only do they have the chance to just franchise tag Daniel Jones, which they didn't do, they also had the chance to draft a quarterback last year, which they didn't do, and then they pigeonholed themselves into a weak class taking one. So they had the chance. They could have done it. They decided not to. That's on them. That's their fault. You can't argue that they should be given the chance when every single chance they've had, they've said, nope, we don't want one. It doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? You can't just ignore that. I think that's an argument that's just so easily looked over. And yeah, I want to see Brian Daboll get his shot at developing a young passer. But the truth of the matter is they should already have one on the roster. They didn't even draft one in the mid-rounds. They could have drafted a Spencer Rattler and had more success than what we've seen this season from some of these guys in there, Tommy DeVito or Drew Lock. Anyone, take a shot on somebody. They didn't even have the balls to take one in the mid-rounds, despite the fact it was a really deep quarterback class, Anthony. And that's really disappointing to me. And we talked about this after the draft. Why did they not take any offensive linemen? Why did they not take any quarterbacks? Instead, I want to make it obvious that the rookie class has been great, but they didn't address key positions that are now, once again, struggling. Quarterback, offensive line, whatever it might be. Dallas, that game, that loss, it wasn't the worst loss I've ever seen, but it was a Giants loss. It was mistakes. And by the way, the Giants have not picked up a sack in how many games now? Their pass rush is non-existent. Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns are starting. Dexter Lawrence starting. They literally are not trying. You have to not try to pick up a sack against Dallas, whose offensive line is in shambles too. You have to actually try to not be able to put up a sack. With talent like this on the roster, it's inexcusable, right? They had one pressure on the quarterback last week. Unexcusable. I really don't know how to sit here and further the point that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen should be fired based on the results of this season. People are like, well, we have to. This is what a rebuild looks like. Guys, the worst year of a rebuild should be the first year of your rebuild, not the third year of your rebuild. This is a rebuild in reverse. Our worst year is in our third season with its head coach and general manager dynamic. I don't understand how that's even remotely possible, how you can even sit there and base that logic on anything. The worst year being the third year of a rebuild, the worst year being the third year of building the foundation and adding free agents and this and that and getting your quarterback back and, implementing an offense. Offense has been relatively the same for 3 seasons now. I know Mike Kafka, the play calling went over, but it's been the same playbook, just different sequences of plays. What are we talking about here? Things have gotten worse in that time, and we're talking about we got to give them a chance to rebuild. They've already gotten the chance. They've ruined it. They didn't draft the quarterback. They've destroyed the roster. They let all their leaders go. They've embarrassed themselves in the locker room. What more do we have to say to come to the conclusion that these guys have failed miserably at their jobs? Failed miserably. Not even an inkling of hope and positivity over the last 2 years. That first year, yeah, we saw Coach of the Year Brian Daboll. Hoorah! We saw the same first-year BS from Pat Sherm. We saw the same year BS from Joe Judge and Ben McAdoo. They all looked good in the first year, and then the second year fell off a cliff into the abyss. We've seen it from every single head coach that we've had over the last 6, 7, 10 years, really. Ever since Tom Coughlin, the first year was great. The next 2 were horrible. We've seen the same exact thing unfold here. Why? The rest of the league catches up, and their failure to construct a roster becomes apparent. Joe Schoen has done nothing. People are on social media, Anthony, saying, oh, well, his roster construction looks good. Oh, he's done some good things. Point me one thing that he's done good aside from this most recent draft class. The free agents have been iffy to say the least. They haven't really provided much in terms of support. What we've lost has not supplemented what we've gained. You know what I mean? Or rather, reverse. What we've gained has not supplemented what we've lost in McKinney and Saquon and whatnot. I don't see all this positivity that Joe Schoen has brought to the team because, good moves should equal wins. And we're losing more games than ever before. So I don't really see the logic behind that, Anthony. Looking at this team right now, this roster, how is your outlook at the moment? I know people are kind of over, it's whatever. We're waiting for the season to end. Just hoping to get the number 1 overall pick, which seems possible, if not likely at this point. How do you feel about the path forward? What do you think needs to happen?
Got to land that number 1 overall pick. I think that plays a large part in it. It's been 60 years, Alex, since the New York Giants held the number 1 overall pick in the draft. 1965. So if they get it in 2025, listen, that's a long time waiting for a first overall pick. So I think here's what the Giants got to do is they need to wait until the end of the year, let these guys play it out, and then take a look at who's available on the market. Because we see a lot of fans, and not to criticize fans, but fans get so far ahead of themselves. They go, fire Dable, hire this guy. Fire Shane, hire this guy. What if that guy doesn't want to be a GM this year? What if that guy doesn't want to be a head coach this year? Like everybody goes, oh, fire this guy, hire Ben Johnson. It's not just Giants fans. Ben Johnson has openly stated many times that he's not interested in being a head coach unless it's a perfect opportunity. How the fuck are the Giants a perfect opportunity? Is that what you guys think? I don't think so. This roster is a goddamn mess. This is a team that's been plagued by ineptitude for 10 years. I don't think this is the perfect situation that Ben Johnson is looking for, but maybe it's something that's interesting to him. You don't know that right now, though. So you're probably not firing Brian Dable after week 13 just to have a maybe what if possibly after week 18 I could hire Ben Johnson. You're going to have to wait until the end of the year, do an evaluation of everybody in your building, and also do an evaluation of everybody outside of your building that might be interested in joining. Then you make a decision. I think that's really the only way to handle this, Alex, because you can have your mind made up whether you want Dable back or not, but you have to take into account you don't know who's available 6 weeks from now, right? And that's what the Giants need to consider. Once we get to that coaching period, that head coach candidacy period, and they have an idea of who is interested in a head coaching job and who isn't, then you make your decision, in my opinion. But right now, I think you got to let them play it out, and you probably know that you're going to fire them anyway if you are, so you let them play it out so you can keep losing. You don't want that mid-season coaching change spark. Like, really, if you're looking at it from the perspective of building this roster for the future, stick with what you've got. At the best, they turn it around and they prove that they should be your coach and GM next year. At the worst, you move higher up in the draft order and you take the best player available with a new head coach and a new GM, or you give them another year. So right now, I think it's too soon to hit any buttons and pull the trigger on anything. I mean, we've seen it before, though. John Mara has gotten pissed off before and made midseason coach firings after promising not to. So we'll see if it happens, but I don't think it will. I think the Giants are going to play patient here and have an evaluation at the end of the season. One thing I'd like to see them do, Alex, I believe that John Mara did this back in 2018 after firing Jerry Reese and Ben McAdoo and blowing it all up and cleaning house then. I believe he brought in a third party to do an evaluation, and then he still ended up hiring Dave Gettleman anyway, which made us all feel like he ignored the third party evaluation. But I think this time around it's kind of necessary. Bring in the third party evaluation once again. Have somebody analyze your company as the New York Giants. Have somebody analyze this business. Tell you what's going wrong and then make a decision on who to hire from there. And don't just go with the retread like a Dave Gettleman once again. Go ahead and hire who they actually recommend, because there's no way those guys who did the evaluation in 2018 recommended Dave Gettleman, the general manager with probably the worst reputation among players at the time. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at, though, Alex. Like, I want to look ahead to the offseason. I want to say that I'd like to see the Giants do this and that, but we really don't know who wants these jobs and who's going to be available and who the top candidates are, because we're not there yet, and a lot of these guys aren't going to want to leave the situations that they're in. Like I always see people say, just pull anyone from that Lions situation. But who in that Detroit Lions front office would want to leave and come to the New York Giants front office and try and revamp that? I mean, seriously? The Lions look like they're set up for 10 years of success. Honestly, a lot of guys would probably rather be an assistant GM for 10 years of winning than a general manager for 2 years and getting fired, you know? So I don't see the incentive for a lot of people to come over to the New York Giants and take a GM job or a head coaching job. And that's the problem, Alex, that they ran into in 2020 when they hired Joe Judge. They missed out on all of their top candidates. They wanted this guy as head coach. They wanted this guy as GM. They tried over and over to find the right guys, and unfortunately, nobody really wanted the job, so who did they settle on? Joe Judge. And how did that go? Fired after 2 years, new general manager, new whole 9 yards. What happened this past offseason, Alex? Giants had about a short list of 8 guys that they wanted for defensive coordinator. Basically, 7 of them told them, no thank you, and they had to land on Shane Bowen. So again, when you're thinking ahead to this offseason as a Giants fan and you're saying, just hire Ben Johnson, he'll fix us, hire this guy, he'll fix us, will he want to? I don't think so. Shane Bowen, being our defensive coordinator, kind of highlighted that for me, because we know that's not who the Giants really wanted to be the defensive coordinator this year. They tried to hire people. They tried to attract people to step into this building and revamp things, to bring in new talent and new guys, new leaders in the front office and coaching staff. None of those guys seem to want to be here. So it's really tricky to look ahead to this offseason, Alex, and find a clear picture of what the direction is for this team. And that's what ultimately leads me to believe they're probably going to stick it out another year with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. I don't think that's the right decision, but it's probably what they're going to do. And whether it be for the best or for not, as we look down the line, the one thing that I have to say, though, about Joe Schoen and why I don't think he should maintain his job, he made one of the most egregious errors in NFL contract history. Somebody needs to be held accountable for that. And Joe Schoen is the guy who signed Daniel Jones to that contract. Therefore, he should be held accountable. And on top of that, look at his drafting. Look at the players that he let leave. Saquon's an MVP candidate. Xavier McKinney is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. You let these guys walk out of the building, it is a stain on your record every single time something like that happens. And unfortunately for Schoen, it's happened too many times. Leonard Williams got better after he left. Julian Love got better after he left. McKinney, Barkley, the list goes on and on. The fact that the New York Giants players are better when they're no longer on the New York Giants tells you just about everything you need to know about the problems that are entrenched inside of this organization, from the front office all the way down to the coaching staff to the players. It's a complete mess, and that's why personally I'm leaning towards full clean house, reboot, just start over from scratch. However, I do understand that that's easier said than done, because I don't think a lot of people want to step in here, clean the house, and actually try and fix this thing.
I think that's a valid point. I think, look, if I'm John Mara right now, I am very, very low-key sending out feelers to people about who actually would take this job, right? Guys with experience. I don't know who those people would be, but I'm putting out feelers like, are you open? Would you go to the Giants? You know, like, is that something you would do? I'm putting out feelers, just testing the waters, seeing if that's something that is even attractive to people. You're basically going to take over with a first round, with a first overall or second overall pick guaranteed at this point. The Giants aren't winning another game, so it's either one or two for them. So you're going to a situation where you're going to get the quarterback that you want, whether it's Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, and you have all this money in the future to spend because Jones's contract will be off the books after 2025. Now, here's my other thing, though, Anthony. A lot of people will say, well, fire Daboll and keep Schoen. Right? Some people will say that. I don't say a lot of people, but some people. I don't think you can do that. And the reason I say you can't do that is because what head coach candidate is going to want to come to a team where all the general manager does is let their best players go, right? All Joe Schoen does, let McKinney go, let Saquon go, let this guy go, let that guy go. At what point why would a head coach want to come here when all the freaking GM does is take the talent away from the head coach? You know what I mean? We're here straight from Jordan Raanan. I think he's a pretty solid, guy. He's in that locker room. He usually has a good tap on what they're going to do. He literally said verbatim that the players do not respect Joe Schoen. Why would any free agents want to come here? I get money, sure. But why would free agents, if they get a similar deal from another team with a better GM, better team, better outlook on the future, why would they want to come to the Giants? You know what I mean? That's a major question that I have. Who wants to deal with Joe Schoen? We know guys avoided the Giants because of Dave Gettleman in the past. We know free agents didn't want to come here, right? Joe Schoen's developed a similar rapport with players. They do not like him. They do not trust him. Why did I want to trade Azeez Ojulari? Because I don't think he's going to want to stay here. This is a losing club with a losing freaking attitude, and Joe Schoen does not show loyalty to the players. He hasn't for years now. So, these are major questions that I do have. Can he repair that look, that image that's been portrayed upon him? I might be too late. The damage may be done. I guess we'll have to find out. But, man, if I'm John Mara, and I know you saw that picture, Anthony, and you guys, I want to hear your thoughts down in the YouTube comment section, rather, about what you thought he was thinking in that moment. Look, Thanksgiving in Dallas, John Mara was sitting alone. Not with his family, not with any friends, not with any personnel, not with any other owners, alone, sitting there with the straightest face I've ever seen, watching the Giants fight from 2 scores down to the Dallas Cowboys led by Cooper Rush. And CeeDee Lamb was already carrying an injury in the second half of that game, right? John Mara's face told me a whole story. Anthony, when you saw his face, when you saw that picture, alone, sitting there, dead eyes looking at that team, what would you think was going through his head? Because to me, that's not good, man. It's not good if you're the general manager and head coach of this team.
It's not good. It's very reminiscent of years past when we've seen John Mara look pissed off in the booth in one of these ugly games, and then 2 weeks later, those guys get fired. It kind of reminded me, Alex, of the infamous chair throw, if you know what I'm talking about, when John Mara, I believe that was in 2017, when he threw the chair and it got caught by, I think, the Fox broadcast. infamous moment for John Mara and the New York Giants, and Giants fans love to have their fun with that clip. That's what it reminded me of. It seemed like a bad omen, right? Like just kind of hanging over Joe Shane and company. Like, hey, this is the result. You've put together a really bad team this year. Your owner is pissed off, and consequences for your actions. I think that's a really important way to put it. It's consequences for actions and maybe even for inaction. The Giants have had some really, really bad decisions be made, or they've had some moments where they could have done something and they chose not to, right? Consequence for inaction. Like you mentioned, the quarterback situation in the draft. They made mistakes this offseason, and for that reason, there will be consequences, and people might get fired. Again, circling back to what I was saying earlier, maybe they won't. Maybe John Mara sticks it out another year because there's not a lot of people interested in fixing this team. But at the end of the day, I kind of, in some ways, felt bad for John Mara sitting up there alone on Thanksgiving, watching his product just be so terrible on the field. But at the same time, I also think about all of the people. How about when you're around your family, Alex, and if you're around your grandparents on Thanksgiving and you're just being grateful for what you have and thankful for it. Think about all the old 85-year-old Giants fans who just want to see this team win a game on Thanksgiving, and they're not doing that. So it's hard for me to feel bad. This was my argument for Daniel Jones. It's hard for me to feel bad for you when you had 6 years of opportunities. For John Mara, it's hard for me to feel bad for you. I know that you've tried and tried everything and nothing seems to work and the team stays terrible, but it's on you to fix it. It's on you to figure it out and be better. And I can't feel bad for you because I know that there are people around the world watching this Giants team desperate to see them be good again. Clock is ticking. Time is running out for a lot of people in the world, and they just want to see a good New York Giants football team. And it's really tragic that this team just can't pull it together. So it's frustrating. It's like enough to be emotional about, especially around the holidays. Just get upset about it and think like, the way that this team has been mismanaged over the last 10 years has just cost people great memories, and that's what we do this for, right? That's what we talk about the Giants for. It's why we watch the Giants. We want to create amazing memories, enjoy good football, and enjoy time with family, watching football, all that kind of stuff, and the Giants have just been so egregiously bad for a decade that we've lost out on all of that wonderfulness, right? Like all those great moments and memories and feelings. So, again, it's just hard for me to feel bad for John Mara when he's sitting up there alone and pissed off like you should be. And I'm pissed off at you, sir. And I want you to do something to fix this shit. Because I've had enough of it. I've had enough of all the losing. And, another thing with John Mara being up there, I will say to his credit, at least he is there. And, on Thanksgiving, I guess he could have chosen to be with his family. But that's another point that I want to bring up, Alex. His family was probably there with him. Because the family is so entrenched inside of this front office, right? We saw the clip of Shadur Sanders smacking hands with no other than Tim McDonald or whatever his name is, a relative of John Merritt's. The only reason he's in that front office. Guarantee you that guy wouldn't have a job in any other NFL front office if he wasn't related to John Mara, and that's part of the problem. The family business aspect of the New York Giants. Sometimes family businesses go belly up and they don't get second, third, fourth, fifth chances. The New York Giants have had every chance in the world because they're a multi-billion-dollar organization, so they're not going to go anywhere. But running it as a family business is clearly not the way to run it anymore, and John Mara needs to stop. He needs to find a new way of doing things, like a truly new way of running this organization. Otherwise, we're just going to be stuck in this for another 10 years, Alex. So, yeah, I'm completely frustrated. Again, a little emotional just watching this team get beat down on a holiday like that around family. It just sucks. It's really disappointing, and I think at the end of the day, once we get into this offseason, difficult conversations are certainly going to be had on this channel and inside the Giants building simultaneously. But really, it's all going to circle back to one man, and that is John Mara. He is the team president. We always talk about the co-owner aspect. He's the owner, so is Steve Tisch. But team president is John Mara. And the way that he has organized this business, because that's what it is at the end of the day, he runs a bad business, and that's why the New York Giants are such a bad organization and football franchise.
Yeah, it is. And listen, right now, this team, if you could call it that, is going through some sort of transition phase in the sense that they've lost their leadership. Now they need someone to step up, right? Whoever they draft, whatever quarterback they get, has to immediately assume the role as primary leader. And I don't know if that's Ward. I don't know if that's Sanders, but whoever it is has to step up and be that guy. The Giants cannot rely on the veterans they have to be leaders anymore. I don't think Dexter Lawrence is a great leader. I think he's a great player, but I don't see him as this like tremendous leader. I don't see anyone stepping up to be that voice, that guy, that galvanizing, kind of piece to this team. It was Saquon on offense, and it was McKinney on defense. They need to bring in, I mean, you could argue Andrew Thomas, but he's been out, obviously, this season for a good chunk of it already. They need someone who's going to step in and be that guy on day one. It's going to be the rookie quarterback they draft. It has to be. There's no other way. There's no other choice. On defense, they got to spend some money. They got to spend some money on a good player and a great leader. I don't know who that's going to be. DJ Reed is one of those guys on the Jets. He is a great leader and a great player. Maybe I wouldn't say great player, but an above-average player. There are guys out there in free agency that you pay to be leaders and good players. The Giants need one of those guys because right now they desperately need it, and they need it in the secondary because the pass rush can do its thing. Winning cures all. We know this, though. The winning cures all, but it's how you face losing. It's how you bounce back from losing. So, if I'm the Giants, I'm going out and getting one of those quarterbacks. One of those two guys is going to have to be your leader on day one. On defense, I'm paying somebody to come in and help galvanize that unit, specifically in the secondary. I just watched Cam Ward march down the field against Syracuse to make it to the playoffs next week. Obviously, it's the last regular season game, but I just watched it march down the field to score. Shedeur Sanders had 5 touchdown passes against Oklahoma State yesterday. These guys are cooking, man. The quarterbacks are cooking. Obviously, they all have different weaknesses, all different strengths. The Giants have pigeonholed themselves. And listen, I'll throw this into the mix here, Anthony, and I'll end with this. Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, a lot of people will say, they shouldn't draft a quarterback if it's a weaker class. Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll have no choice. They have no more time to waste. They cannot waste another draft waiting for a quarterback. Can't do it. They have to take somebody. It's now or never. If they don't take somebody, they should have just fired them, right? They have to take a quarterback. But if you bring in another general manager, a guy with experience, you bring in another head coach, they have the first overall pick, you don't necessarily have to draft a quarterback. They could elect to trade back. They could elect to stockpile draft selections and maybe wait till 2026 in a stronger class. Maybe they want to trade back and take the best player available. Maybe they go after a Will Johnson or a Travis Hunter or somebody else. And they don't necessarily have to reset with that quarterback now. And they just use a bridge like a Justin Fields. They rebuild the roster, the depth. They're good enough. And then they use that draft capital to move up. That's the argument that you can make for a new resume. I don't say that's necessarily you have to do that. Regime, sorry. Not resume. Regime, I'm sorry. I always get that one wrong. But you could argue that's something that they could decide to do. I think they have to go after a quarterback. But a new regime does allow you to be a little bit more flexible in what you want to do.
I agree with you, and I want to make this point as well. A lot of fans keep saying, what good is firing the general manager and the head coach and doing the same thing over again? And I will argue there is a key difference here, bringing in a new regime right now versus the last 2 times, Alex. Right now, the new regime that would come in would not be married to a quarterback, and that's a key difference. The last 2 times, Alex, that the Giants have hired a new general manager, there has been an established starting quarterback in place. Think about it. 2018, they hired Dave Gettleman. Eli Manning was still here. He was still the starting quarterback, and people still believed in him as a starting quarterback. Okay, so now fast forward to 2022 when the Giants hired Joe Schoen. Daniel Jones was the starting quarterback, established, and people in the building still believed in him. There is no starting quarterback in the building right now, and that is the key difference. The Giants actually have an opportunity to reboot and reset from scratch now. That's the big differentiator for me. There isn't a quarterback in the building, so that's why I think I advocate a little bit more enthusiastically for cleaning house. Bring somebody in, a new regime can step in here, decide whether or not they need to bring in a quarterback immediately or if they want to go by a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan, whatever it is. And maybe in year 2 or 3 of the plan, that's when you take the quarterback and you use a bridge until then. That's also possible, but it wasn't possible before. The Giants didn't have that luxury when they had established starters on the roster while they were bringing in general managers, but this time it's different. The Giants could have the first overall pick with no quarterback on the roster and the flexibility to take a quarterback and fill that hole on the roster or to not take a quarterback and fill other holes on your roster. That's the difference between now and 2022 and 2018. The Giants had quarterbacks in 2018 and 2022. Were they good quarterbacks? It's debatable. Eli Manning was on his last leg. Daniel Jones was going into a contract year, so you tough it out with him for another season, sure. Whether or not they were good quarterbacks doesn't matter, though, because they were starting quarterbacks established in the lineup. The Giants don't have one of those, so this is the prime opportunity to bring in a new regime. In the past, we've seen general managers, Alex, step in, Giants or otherwise, step in, have to deal with a quarterback already on the roster, mismanage it severely. This is what just happened to the New York Giants. And then, of course, it costs them their job 2 to 3 years down the line. This time around, clean slate. This roster is a mess. There's barely any talent left on it, and there's no quarterback. And that is crucial because that gives a general manager, Alex, autonomy to do whatever the fuck he wants. And that's what I'm looking for. I want a GM that doesn't have handcuffs, that doesn't have to appease this person or that person, or make sure that this quarterback has this piece and that piece. You can actually completely reboot finally. The Giants haven't been able to reboot the last 2 times that they've cleaned house and rebooted the roster. They haven't truly done that. They can do that right now because there is no quarterback on the roster, and that's the key difference. So when fans say why insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, this isn't the same thing. This is something completely different to hire a general manager when you do not have a quarterback in your starting lineup.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And I think the point that resonated with me the most is the Giants have pigeonholed themselves into having to make the one choice. They have to draft a quarterback, right? They don't have a choice. They literally do not have a freaking choice. So what does a new regime allow you to do? Well, it allows you to make the right choice. It allows you to make the choice that is not tethered to mistakes, tethered to Daniel Jones's contract and benching and departure, not tethered to John Mara expecting this or expecting that. A new face allows you to say, we're starting from scratch and we're doing it the way that we think is best to build this team up. That may mean taking a quarterback, but it shouldn't be like this is what we have to do. This is the only choice. If the Giants say to themselves, these 2 quarterbacks are not that good, I'd rather go after Jackson Dart in the 2nd round and take a Travis Hunter in the 1st round because I don't see the biggest difference between Jackson Hart and Cam Ward at the professional level, or Shadur Sanders and Jackson Dart. I'm just using Jackson's name because, or you could say Jalen Milroe. You could throw out anybody, any name out there. And I think that's, Carson Beck's another one. People are higher on him in the NFL circles than they are just in the general media because of the scheme he's running. Look, I'm not a huge I'm not a huge Carson Beck fan, but I think that if you're the Giants and you're like, well, we could get Travis Hunter, an elite 2A player, to see which position he takes to better in the NFL, and he's going to be phenomenal wherever you put him. I mean, Malik Neighbors and Travis Hunter, that's a duo you'd build with for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 decade, right? Like that's what that looks like for you. And then in addition, you allow yourself to now prepare for the future. You get a Jackson Dart in the 2nd round. You see what he can do. Maybe you strike gold. Brian Dable's supposed to be this quarterback whisperer. Kenny is the only player that he can develop the number 1, number 2 quarterback in the draft, or can he develop somebody that's a little bit worse than that into a competent player? That's what you expect quarterback whisperers to do. Develop players that aren't necessarily ready to be elite right now. Or necessarily the top 2 quarterbacks in the draft. Like most people should be able to do that. Of course, it's easier said than done. Ask Caleb Williams what's going on right now. So, I kind of feel as though if you're the Giants, they're pigeonholing themselves. They have one path to take because of Joe Schoen, because of Brian Dable. They have only one path. I think that's a legitimate argument that you can make, that a new face would allow them to make the right decision, not the only decision they can make at this point.
I agree, and I really am happy that you brought up Caleb Williams because I think that's a perfect example. What happened was the Chicago Bears had a head coach that they weren't 100% certain of. They didn't fully believe in Matt Eberflus going into the season, but they held the 1st overall pick, and he was good enough, right? Eberflus was good enough in many ways, so what did they do? They draft the quarterback, and they put him on the team with Eberflus. And what do you know? The lame duck head coach ended up being a lame duck head coach, and they had to fire him midseason. And what does that do for your quarterback? It creates a disaster. You never want to have a head coach fired in the 1st season of your rookie quarterback's career. The Giants just experienced that in 2019. They fired Shermer after 1 season, and look at how things spiraled out of control for the franchise and for Daniel Jones specifically. Don't put a quarterback in that situation again. If you are uncertain of your head coach, if you are uncertain that he's going to be here long term, then he shouldn't be here next year to coach a rookie quarterback. I'm sorry, that's just the wrong way of doing it. I believe in Brian Dable somewhere, not here. I don't think it's going to work out. And that sucks to say because I really like Brian Dable, and I think he is a good coach. He hasn't had his best moments here. He's had some good, he's had some bad, he's had some ugly for sure. I think this roster has been a really shitty hand dealt to him, and I think Joe Shane is more responsible for the mess that the Giants are than Brian Dable, personally speaking. But that's the last thing I want to see is Brian Dable. Maybe he is a great coach, Alex. I'm not so sure. And if the Giants aren't so sure, then don't give him a rookie quarterback to ruin. You know? If you've got 1 year of Brian Dable left, don't make that 1 year the most crucial year for a quarterback. The rookie season is so crucial for the quarterback. Don't give that quarterback a lame duck head coach. If you're going to take the quarterback, he should get a brand new slate. He should get a brand new coach, quarterback's coach, offensive coordinator, all of it. Restart. That's really the only way forward, in my opinion. Sucks to say, because again, I think Brian Dable will be a good coach somewhere, and I like him. I like him a lot, and I think he's talented. But I've seen what's happened around the NFL, and I've seen what's happened in the New York Giants organization over the last decade. And I've seen this quarterback standing on thin ice head coach standing on thin ice gets himself a shiny new rookie quarterback. Does that ever work out? Not really. It always results in disaster. And what else does it do? Not only kills the coach's career, usually kills the quarterback's career. And that's why I'm scared for Caleb Williams, because I think he's tremendously talented. Everybody knows how much talent he has. But now he's got to go into year 2 with a new head coach, new OC, new playbook. And we've seen that before as Giants fans. We know how detrimental that was to Daniel Jones' development. Is that really where we want to put ourselves going into 2025? Forcing it to work with Brian Dable and a Shedeur Sanders? Sanders has all the talent in the world too. But if he's got to play with Dable and, oh man, the Giants only win 5 games in 2025, time to bring in a new coach. Maybe he'll fix Sanders. And then it just gets worse. What do you do then? So, if you're going to fire one, you got to fire both, and you got to clean house. That's really where I'm at. And again, guys, it sucks to say because I think everybody knows that I had a pretty strong belief in Brian Dable going into this season. I had high hopes for Joe Shane as well, although I had pretty severe criticisms of him throughout the offseason. I wanted it to work. I really did. And it sucks to say, as a Giants fan, with all that hope going into 2024, I think you just got to reboot and start over in 2025, unfortunate as it may be. But that's kind of where I'm at, and we have a lot of time over the next 6 weeks to see how this season finishes, and we'll make up our minds by the time the season's over. But for now, you guys now know where I'm leaning. Alex, if you've got any closing thoughts on where you're leaning, I think everybody's kind of gotten the gist of it.
Yeah, I think that was a well-articulated point in the sense that, if you don't have full conviction in Brian Dable, just as you maybe don't or maybe do in a quarterback, and Dable doesn't win more than 5 games next year and they fire him, you've already started off your situation with a new quarterback on a losing note. You are already preparing to destroy this young man's development and career. Like, that's what the Giants are good at, destroying. Their best case scenario, I think, is cleaning house, still, having conviction in a quarterback, taking that guy to go well with a young, or it could be an experienced head coach, a good, maybe even experienced offensive coordinator, or a young offensive coordinator with a lot of upside potential, learning from one of these really great guys. Who knows? Like, there's so many opportunities, so much potential. I think John Mara is just tired of the turnover. I think if he does not fire Joe Shane, if he does not fire Brian Dable, it's because he is tired of going through this process. It's not necessarily because I think that he thinks they can do a good job. It's because he just doesn't want to go through the process of hiring a whole new GM and a whole new head coach again. He's done it 3 times already. Well, twice with the GM, 4 times with the head coach. At what point it's like, God, I just don't want to go through this again. I mean, if anything, maybe you hire an outside firm to help you find that guy. But as you said earlier, who the hell wants to come here? You got to fire both of them. Who the hell is available? Who wants to come to the Giants? Who wants to take over this horrid roster with bad contracts still being paid out and injuries all over the place? Like, who wants to be the coach here? This isn't a great situation for a young coach. You could argue it's being set up for failure, but at least you have the ability to take a quarterback and build from scratch on day one. You're not inheriting Daniel Jones. You're not inheriting any other quarterbacks. This is your chance to start from scratch. You have a 2-3 year situation at your hands where you can take steps forward. I think Joe Shane's lost the respect of the players. I think Brian Dable's lost the respect of the players. And I think that's really hard to come back from. That type of mutiny, really hard to come back from. Listen, we didn't see much effort against Dallas. I want to make it apparent. The Giants scored some points. It wasn't the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen. But we're talking about a team that like literally has not picked up a sack in weeks consecutively. We're talking about a team that can't get the ball to their playmakers. The rookies are playing hard because they're rookies, they're young, but the veterans have checked out. Injuries are obviously now a big problem. Like young guys are now fighting for their jobs. So hopefully we'll see some effort from guys like Elijah Chapman, youngsters that DJ Davidson have no choice but to actually fight because their futures depend on it. But older guys that have been on this roster for a minute or know their jobs are secured and cemented, there's no reason for them to fight that hard, and they're going to give up. They already have. So, other players around the league, free agents are looking at this team right now, impending free agents, saying to themselves, that locker room already gave up on that head coach. Do I really want to walk into a situation where those players don't like the guys there, don't like the front office, don't like the coaching staff, they don't have any pride in themselves? I don't know, man. Like, money talks at the end of the day, but if you get a similar offer from another team, I'm going to that other team that hasn't been embarrassed from the inside out, because the Giants have just beaten themselves up. They've already embarrassed themselves to a degree that I don't know if it's sustainable for another off season. I don't think anyone's going to want to come here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's really difficult when you're in this situation to attract good candidates. And so maybe that is why they stick with Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen. I think you made a really good point. I think John Mayer is just tired of the overturn. But again, I think it's really important for him to realize this is different from the previous overturn. Previously, you were hiring a head coach into a general manager. Previously, you were hiring a general manager who was inheriting a quarterback. Like, it's completely different this time. Like, this is the actual start from scratch moment if you want it to be. If you just go with the head coach going into another season on his last leg and throw him a rookie quarterback, hope it all gets better, what if it doesn't? So much for John Mara to consider, much for him to weigh in his mind and decide by the end of the year. And obviously, we're going to keep going back and forth on this almost every day, talking about all the different ins and outs and thoughts and opinions, review of this and preview of that. It's all going to happen right here on Fireside Giants. Again, guys, super thankful for your support over the last, what's it been, like 4 years now we've been doing this? Pretty incredible. And we're only getting started. We're here forever. So can't wait to keep doing it for you guys here on Fireside Giants. And I know it's been a tough 4 years of watching us and watching the Giants lose pretty much every single one of those years, but eventually it's going to turn around and we're all going to be thrilled. Like, these episodes are going to be so fun once we're really good, and everybody, Alex, I'm going off on a tangent, but I swear I'm going to wrap it up. I always get annoyed when we're watching, like, I'm on Twitter and Chiefs fans are like, do you see how bad our offensive tackle is? I can't deal with this shit. I'm like, yo, F you, you're 10-1. You don't know what bad offensive tackle play really looks like. I can't wait, though, until we're there, Alex. Once we've got a good team and we're complaining about semantics and bullshit like that. I mean, we're complaining about serious issues like long-standing. The Giants have been plagued by things for a decade. Once we're finally good, we can start complaining about those little things, and that's going to feel awesome. Can't wait for that. But it's going to be a long road to get there. And of course, we're going to break down exactly what that road looks like and how to get to the other side of this tunnel right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.